So I feel a little bit of exhausted and tired. I don't know why. For today, so maybe I just do the 20 minutes, maybe the 30, but I'm not it's not freestyle of talking. Today I want to read the book to check my reading, also my pronunciation. So let's get started. To check my reading and my pronunciation. So let's get started. At 8 o'clock. Wait, I'm gonna change this one. Here, I'm gonna put this one. Wait, I'm gonna make it smaller like this. Then make this one about. Okay, and make this one this big. Is it okay for me now? Yeah. Oh yeah, it's okay now. At 8 o'clock, shop assistant Fernando arrived and distributed documents. And when Kim was one of the most excited, Professor Perry appeared. She would never forget that moment. When a burly man with hair trimmed around the sides, wearing a blue seaman's hood shirt and with a gentle smile like Buddha, gradually advanced into the classroom, sitting on an electric blue chair. Professor Padley, this famous star, Kim was surprised. He was he was disabled. His wheelchair made a noise, which disconcerted him as his wheelchair ran past her place. Following a natural reflex, she stood up and bowed to greet the professor respectfully. This ceremonial act surprised the students in the classroom because they were indifferently chewing gum. However, the professor didn't appear surprised as he nodded his head to put her back and continued to direct his wheelchair towards the instructor's desk. After a few minutes of lecturing and instructing, the professor moved his wheelchair back, making room for Spanish students. Each person in the room was to give a lecture to his classmates, and the role of the professor was to only issue general guidelines. After the class, Professor Padley rode his wheelchair next to Kim, smiling honestly. You are Vietnamese, right? You are Vietnamese, right? You are Vietnamese, right? I have heard from the dean. I, I have heard from the dean that you entered the school late. It is rare to have a student from Vietnam. Try okay. If you need anything, always come to my office. I am not there. If I am not there, then always remember my assistant, Fernando. Kim was touched and softly thanked him, then gave away to allow him to pass and drive his wheelchair onto the elevator. It was raining again. One of the several, one of several famous English vigorous rains falling continuously non-stop. Some called wind brushing him, whipping across Kim's face as if wrapped a scarf so tight across her neck. as she wrapped a scarf so tight around her neck that she choked, breathing a dry cough. The Oxford students liked riding bicycles and locked their bikes along the street. But Kim, the Oxford students liked riding bicycles and locked their bikes along the street. But Kim knew that she would only be here for a short time, so she didn't need to buy a bicycle to do anything. There would be times when the bike would be broken, and it would further be difficult to find a place on the street corner to fix it as in Vietnam. To fix it as in Vietnam. At the bus station there, at the bus station, there were only a few people waiting, chewing with their mouths, making a bit of munching noise. Kim's stomach was also gnawing, so she opened her satchel, looking for a piece of candy to to chow, to chew, while holding her breath. It was wa- it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the bus took him past this startling knowledge. The group usually never got high scores and always received very harsh criticisms from the professors. Once Kim wistfully said, I could join a group of indigenous students with good grades that had a few other foreign students to help bear my burden so that way I won't lag so far behind. Fernando angrily protested. With that idea, you have put aside your own abilities to burden others. If you want to be recognized, you must have self-esteem. Feeling that she had been badly insulted, Kim vowed never to look at Fernando's face again. But then she suddenly remembered her first days at the university in Vietnam, where she usually disregarded those fellows from the remote provinces. She thought how much better her English was, that dynamically poor condition the books were in. How could they join the business work without knowing anyone? Those folks also couldn't introduce themselves to others in the city like him. So they hung around in their own group, helped each other study, and then looked for work in order to pay for their living expense far from home. Never had she worried about having the same problems of theirs. Now, at Oxford, she realized that the distance between the others and herself was extremely greatest in Saigon. The civilized ones saw her as a mountain bar- barbarian stepping out and demanding to join the team. The campus had many old Victorian houses on Woodstock Street. Kim lived, lived in a house that had 12 residents. She was amazed to recognize the various images of the large dormitories across across Oxford, across Oxford, often widely seen in films, completely appropriate for the universities in America for all the other students or all the other or, or all the other present cities in England. Oxford was probably faithful to its ancient architectural style. There were a number of lovely small old homes with several tiny apartments that lined the various beautiful streets such as Woodstock, Walton, and Street Zone, Street John, and served as student dormitories. Living in the same apartment with Kim was Yutaka, a Japanese, and Leji, a Chinese, all female students from Asia. They were attracted. They were attracted to. They were attracted to each other the first time because they were all Oriental. The three of them liked to eat rice together in the kitchen on the first floor. But several weeks later, Lechi automatically evaded all the Asians in order to rapidly enter the European world. Lechi was the youngest, most beautiful new pre-university student with an A level, but she liked to mess around all the time. Every day when Kim went down to the kitchen to brew tea, she was st- startled. She was startled to notice the face of the young lady in the room with the Spanish group until very late at night. Kim tried to counsel Le Chi, but the young lady raised her face so unpleasantly that she decided to let her live her own way. She heard somewhere that Le Chi was an only child, her father was a businessman, and her mother was an actress. Her family was wealthy but not happy. Yukata was the complete opposite of Lechi. She was the same size and age as Kim, with a, with a good character, not beautiful but lived quietly. Yukata but lived quietly. Yukata studied archaeology, a branch always a branch always looking to the past, so she also seemed very strange. The Westerns, the Westerners were cautious of Yutaka, so they frequently only had contact with Kim and Lechi. They appeared to value Kim more because he was friendly, but knew when to stop, not passing the moment of no return, as the young lady from China. Many times Kim shook her head, laughing in amazement. She believed before that Japanese women were, were always surrounded by men. Yet yet the Chinese girls, the Chinese, the Chi- yet the Chinese girl was better at that. At the end of October, Kim was delighted to welcome a new countryman from Vietnam. She was a university professor arriving to attend the refreshers course for a scientific marine program and would be at Oxford for only 4 months. For the first few days, Thuy had to depend on Kim to introduce herself, to introduce her to the school and helped her with some paperwork. Kim was surprised to realize that Thuy was completely different than her. She didn't speak English well, but pretended she did. She did. She liked to raise her voice at the elder senior ranking sister. Though she was a Though she was the only year older than Kim, Kim often looked at Thuy as ignorant yet acting as top educated, and she pondered over the words of her department dean. Many freshman universities are sometimes compared to grant degrees to various personalities who have arrived from fortune countries because of diplomacy or politics. Really fed up over the time she had spent with Riha. Kim also displeased with the crowning of her homeland compatriot. Riha had a bit of beauty, though she was married and had a 2-year-old son. It was embarrassing in the way that she made eyes at all the boys here, whether black or white, so long as they were burly handsome types, with flirt, flirt, I flirtatious manner of Fiha ignoring the real world, like the mole, made him ashamed, made him ashamed when someone asked, "You and Fiha are both Vietnamese, right?" Kim was, dis- Kim was disappointed, believing that she would never find an intimate friend here. She was, of course, lost in. She was, of course, lost in class. Returning to her dormitory, she also only had several new social relationships. Perhaps the Westerners weren't cold, even willing to help, but they themselves were busy and Kim felt very inferior. Several British guys as several British guys as handsome as Prince Williams, suddenly coming from important families, occasionally made Kim swoon when she looked at them, but she knew they weren't interested in her. There were also some ugly young men with freckles filling their face. Many times Kim wanted to make friends with them, but they appeared to be shy. Several young men came from foreign countries around the world, men of all colors, men of all types, handsome as Brad Pitt, but not like him. The Challenger. It was a golden, clear, sunny day, so Kim threw something light over her shoulders. It was really a rare day to see the blue sky too clear, so clear. Kim stepped into the college past the powerful ancient wooden gate, for she had an appointment at Professor Pedley's office. The professor greeted her with a friendly smile, but Kim still seemed to have no strength left as she trembled with apprehensions. Apprehension. The professor asked, The professor asked, "Do you believe you have worked as hard as possible on this essay?" Yes, yes. Kim tried to hold back, answering very softly, "Yes, already." Where did you get the information? The professor prompted, um, gently looking at Kim, pers- perspiring and smiling encouragingly, and, and smiling encouragingly, inhaling deeply, breathing steadily. From the internet, from all the books I noted in the essays, biography, and from where? Professor asked. From Fernando Carvalho, your assistant. Kim awkwardly, 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 awkwardly confessed. She suddenly remembered she had not yet given back the document to him from the time they hadn't they hadn't looked at each other until now. What was its subject matter? That information Fernando actually had since he received on the job training at the Aero Expo Aero Expo company 3 years ago. It's okay. I only wanted to know whether or not you searched vigorously in your task. By the way, Professor Brandeis impied, impied smiling. Does Fernando regularly help you, not only with my subject, but also with your several other subjects? Kim blushed. She didn't know what to say. Finally, she confessed that the two of them had a dispute over her method of study, so that so at it so at this time they were temporarily pondering over who was correct. Bailey nodded, repeated, observing, "Fernando is a very young man. He also has some points similar to yours. He is also a foreigner, studious and very kind." Kim waited for the professor to offer more praise. Personally, he turned to her primary subject. He commented that Kim's essay lacked many important details. He commented that Kim's essay lacked many important details, was written in a difficult manner to understand, and was not presented professionally, saying the manner of presentation is also as important as the content. The contents. The professor sincerely re- recommended you should depend on Fernando to show you the way. After this, in order to graduate with the others, you must write a better essay. Kim nodded, her head pretending to agree. The professor further recommended as she put her coat over her shoulders. You should also look for a theme of your thesis. If you want to graduate in only 1 year, you must work hard. You must work as hard as possible, and you must have a plan. Kim nodded her head again like a puppet, but she didn't dare ask. Who will show me the various methods of learning and studying in order to really understand? I came from Vietnam. The professor had rolled his wheelchair up to see Kim off at the floor. She mustered up the courage to look back again and say, Professor, as soon as Kim started mumbling, while standing hastily with the one foot directly inside and the one foot outside of Professor Pally's door, Fernando appeared. He pretended not to see Kim, therefore she was also embarrassed and tried to ignore him completely. Finally, the professor had to raise his voice. Why don't the two of you acknowledge each other? Then look at Fernando and Kim, scrolling that the children, scrolling that the children, uh, wait, mm, scrolling that the children should greet each other. The man with the gentle smile like Buddha shook his head, disappointed, and said, "Some young people, Kim be Kim P. Wild, Kim B. Wild, Kim B. Wilderly, I don't even know how to pronounce it." Looked at him. So, this one. And then turned her head hastily and left before the professor could again say one's relevant sentence at all. It was dark when Fernando slowly drifted into Kim's dormitory to make amends. Her hair was tanked and she had just fried potatoes and was dipping them into canned fish that reeked of mirror oil from the kitchen. Red hot, very dirty and still in suspense and on the edge. She cursed him to burst out laughing and pull out a handkerchief in studious manner for her to whip herself. Her group of friends were also sitting and eating in the kitchen, witnessing this scene and looking at each other thinking, this Vietnamese, this Vietnamese girl that we thought was Mick has a boyfriend, but has been hiding the secret. Kim were unwittingly surprised when Thuy Ha and Lei Jun happily commented, You pretend you pretend to be virtuous, but actually you are not. Kim was amazed to such an extent that she froze and couldn't make any reaction. Even when Fernando held her hand to pull her into the room, Kim dragged his heels, following him like a sleepwalker. He looked, groping all over the tiny, untidy room, and then flung a great deal of exercise book on her table in a rude manner. Your study corner is like this, huh? How is it possible for one younger to be able to live in such a horrible apartment like this? I don't I don't understand at all how you can study. Fernando scored with a displeased vo- with a displeased voice, but Kim still had not awakened from her shock. She mumbled, not, not able to say any sentence. Fernando continued, "You don't have a plan, but yet you have much pride and won't stand to listen to someone who has gone before. You are a person filled with ability, but without the knowledge to make the most of it. Scholars brand honor untruthful." Huh? Kim began to sense what was happening and demanded, "Who ordered you to enter my room and run me down? I don't need you. I don't need you." Fernando spoke again. "Not needed? So who lamented with her professor that she came from Vietnam? Nobody can show her a working method to understand well. She is she is isolated. She is dis- she is she is distressed." "I didn't say that. Never say that. And I didn't say that. Never said that." Kim reacted feebly. "That's right. You didn't say it." Fernando's stern eyes glared. "But your info, inferi- inferiority, but your inferiority complex attitude, your negative reaction, your imploring eyes had made the professor immediately realize the fact, realize that fact. So Kim said really crazily, "What influenced you?" Kim pushed Fernando to the foot of the bed so hard that he fell rolling over. His fall made the iron bed run into the high stone wall, hitting it loudly. Furthermore, Fernando's shoes weight, thrashing continuously noisily on his feet. The adjacent room of students cried out, "My God, they are making wild love." Kim could clearly hear Thiha's loud voice swishing fresh follies in Vietnamese. The world now knows that we are also alive to the end. When Kim just realized this strange situation, she abruptly didn't know how to act at all. Nevertheless, Fernando's unforgiving sharp eyes still stared at her. Finally, of course, Kim cried. She didn't understand why in Vietnam she originally wasn't not at all the type that cheered up, but after coming, it was easy to let others see her weak in this way. The more she cried, the more she made large hiccups. The larger the hiccups, the louder Fernando laughed. "You are filled with weakness. Quick, quick, evil, evil, evil." Kim tried very hard to not stammer. "Cruel, cruel." Fernando smiled repeatedly. "I hate you." Kim shouted. Hate, imitated his voice, teasing. I. Kim really forgot what she had said. She suddenly realized for a moment that Fernando was still lying on her bed, lying in a comfortable manner, not interested in taking off his shoes. His hands were immediately contriving to make a temple, and his legs were waving in rhythm. But Kim, she sat flat on the floor crying. She suddenly displayed no dignity at all. Finally, Kim realized that she had to stand up and behave properly in her role of hostess, hostess, of hostess, of hostess. She tried with all her strength to loudly and dignifiedly cry out, "Please leave my room." "Of course," Fernando said, recovering before Kim arose. I have no intention of sleeping in this rather dirty apartment with so many books." Kim mumbled. Head. Fernando reminded her. His cut his face, finished saying, I, I, I wanna kill you." Kim said, short of breath. "Go ahead and kill me," Fernando dared, his voice teasing. "Are you eating all of your tired Are you eating all of your fried potatoes with hot tomatoes in order to have strength? You are so weak that you cannot study. So how you can have the strength to kill me? Or strike me as hard as you can with your foot, with your fist, with your fist. Okay, go ahead and hit me. Kim looked at Fernando's strong, robust body. She knew that if she hit him, it would be just like throwing an egg into a rock. But her self-respect would not permit her to let go if he short of challenge. Kim tried with all her entire life strength to punch one blow into Fernando's stomach, but was immediately thrown backwards. Fernando watched Kim fall away head first, laughing disdainfully and saying, "Does your hand hurt?" Being pushed into this awful situation, Kim only knew how to jump and cry out loud, like a child pushed into a corner. Fernando stopped being cruel any longer. His solid hands grasped, grabbed grabbed her shoulders into a comforting manner and said, "Stop it now. It's okay now, be calm. Then I will show you how to get revenge and even ways in which you can hate me more." In the next room, the students were busy holding their ears close to very thin word, trembling with excitement. Finally, they were discouraged and spread the news around. "That's it. The show is over." Then searched for the books and scattered. Of course, the group was wrong. It was only the beginning. From that time on, from morning until night, thought the wind was cold, thought it was raining. Fernando regularly called Kim by telephone to wake her up. When she was finished washing her face, brushing her teeth, yawning and tying her sore legs, Fernando would arrive. He made Kim run around in circles, practicing physical exercise around the area of the dormitory. She panted, distracted, her mouth sobbing, and cursed her adversary who was busy raising his thick hind, running and keeping a lookout behind. He forced one weakly girl like him, scared of exercising, to endlessly practice difficult intellectual and sporting activities. So Fernando continued to teach in this new prisoner mode, always making Kim get out of bed after she had first slept sufficiently. Oh yeah, so this is the end of this speaking practice. I believe I'm gonna end it right now and then chilling a little bit, then go to sleep. I can say that my pronunciation as well as my reading is really bad right now. I gotta read more in order to improve my English reading as well as my pronunciation. Because this caption it can't capture my reading pronunciation. Like it can only uh, cap capture my speaking voice, but when I read a book, it cannot. It can't do it, which means my pronunciation while I was reading, when I was reading books, it was so bad that even this Google Meet can't even capture it. Okay, so I'm gonna set this one here. Put it something like this, and put it over here. Yeah, so this is the end of this video right now. So see myself in tomorrow.